Hello, my name is Stacy Hodge, producer of learning experiences at the National Restaurant Association, and I would like to thank you all for participating in this webinar titled Meeting Gen Z Demands Through Food Service Innovation. We are thrilled to provide this learning opportunity as we begin developing the National Restaurant Association show sessions for 2019. Please stay tuned for future education offerings. And before we get started, I'd like to cover a few logistics for today's webinar. Please make sure that the media player in the bottom left-hand corner of your On24 attendee screen is active to access the audio functionality for this webinar. We will take questions at the end of today's webinar. You may type questions at any time using the questions window in your On24 screen. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible before we conclude the webinar. If your question is not addressed, we will follow up via email. You will receive a brief webinar evaluation after we conclude. We ask that you take just a few minutes to provide your feedback and suggestions on topics that you would like us to consider as we develop future programs. Your feedback is very important to us. And we would also like to thank our webinar sponsor, Georgia Pacific Professional, for their ongoing support. They are an incredible National Restaurant Association partner and a strong advocate for these extended learning opportunities as part of the National Restaurant Association show. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two speakers, Rebecca Volk and Tom Biddy. Rebecca serves as the Marketing Strategy Lead for Georgia Pacific Professional's Food Service segment and holds responsibility for understanding the market dynamics that structure today's ever-evolving food service industry. Rebecca utilizes this market knowledge to commercialize Dixie-branded solutions and provide key insights for developing additional innovations within the portfolio. From social sustainability movements to Gen Z, Rebecca loves to study the trends and consumer set that makes the food service industry tick, and we're thrilled to have her share her insights with us today. We'd also like to welcome Tom Biddy, who has led the Food Service Innovation Team at Georgia Pacific Professional since 2015. Tom has a highly successful record of driving value and strong business growth in the areas of packaging innovation and improved profitability for leading CPG, food service, and QSR organizations, including Kraft and Nabisco. With demonstrated knowledge in packaging materials, new product innovation, manufacturing, engineering, and R&D, Tom is future-focused, anticipating the food service innovation the industry needs. Please join me in welcoming Rebecca and Tom.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. Also, a big thank you to NRA for hosting us. As Stacey said, my name is Rebecca Volk, and I'm excited to walk you all through some insights that we here at GP have gathered around Generation Z, and then turn the conversation over to Tom, the director of our Food Service Innovation Team here at Georgia Pacific, to share how we view innovation through the lens of Gen Z. We hope to have a robust conversation on this topic and are looking forward to hearing questions from you as well. First of all, to ground everyone on who Gen Z is, we're talking about consumers aged 13 to 22. So they are younger than millennials but older than Gen Alpha. They have $44 billion in spending power and influence another $600 billion, which basically means a lot of them have a pulse on their parents' wallets as well. But lucky for all of us, they are total foodies, with 1 out of $4 being spent on food. Generation Z is a unique generation in their attitudes, values, and beliefs. While many are still in their teens, they show levels of maturity far beyond their years. They are realistic yet soulful. A major differentiator between Generation Z and millennials are their experiences with technology. Gen Z are digital natives as opposed to millennials who are tech adopters. Gen Z didn't witness innovation, they were born into them. They never knew a world without smartphones and social media and are able to easily navigate up to 5 devices at a time. This is a generation that was playing an educational game on their parents' iPad while also watching PBS. They have been said to have only an 8-second attention span, but this is actually to their advantage given the fact that they digest mountain loads of data every day and have to quickly narrow their sources and see what is authentic and worth their time. The next differentiator of Generation Z is their soulfulness. They have an immense support of brands that stand for something and have their shared values. Generation Z is thoughtful and wants to be part of a story. They desire to care for brands that care. They have one of the highest volunteer rates and an equally high likelihood of rallying for or protesting against a brand. Lastly, it has been said that Generation Z is a very deal-oriented generation. This is true in some ways. Basically, value is very important to Generation Z, but this is not just about money. As we said before, they are used to sifting through mountain loads of data and can quickly decipher authenticity. They are also the first minority-majority generation, making them extremely multicultural and diverse. Value to Gen Z is spending money on restaurants that will provide a return on their investment. Restaurants that have ingredient and menu transparency and even environmental sustainability prove to Gen Z that they are getting something worth the money that they are spending. So now that we have a good understanding of who Generation Z is, I'm excited to share with you all a deeper understanding of what they care about in food service. In order to get a pulse on what drives Gen Z to dine in one location versus another, we utilized a wide array of syndicated research, immersions, and surveys of over 700 Gen Zers. In our findings, we break out visitation drivers by food service subsegments, acknowledging the key differences between QSR, fast casual, and casual dine establishments. Then, we rank our findings based on non-negotiables, what you need to do well today, brand differentiators, what competitive brands are doing today to stand out, and future-focused, what you need to do well to be successful tomorrow. Let's take a look at the non-negotiables first. These should all be table stakes for your daily operations. So you'll see that there are 3 columns here to identify specific sub-segment non-negotiable drivers for QSR, fast casual, and casual dine patron visitation. As you look at this chart, the top row indicates visitation drivers that are needed in all 3 subsegments of food service. In other words, it's foundational for everyone listening in to place food quality, order accuracy, hygiene, and friendly service at the top of your list of things you need to do well today. The bottom row gets specific for the subsegment. For instance, speed is a non-negotiable factor that plays out in a fast food setting, as you may have predicted, but is not quite as critical for fast casual and casual dine. The highlighted items in red elevate that specific driver even further. So the elements highlighted in red are areas where Gen Z preferences over-indexed and are critical for your subsegment. Next, let's move into brand differentiators. These are the things that competitive brands are doing today to stand out. But remember, the non-negotiables we just discussed must be done first in order to play in this game well. So unique and craveable food is driving visitation for all 3 subsegments. It's interesting here to see where Gen Z expectations differ among the different subsegments. For example, social responsibility is noted for QSR and fast casual, but not quite as important for casual dine. Additionally, the food's visual appeal and having knowledgeable staff is important for casual dine, but not quite as important for QSR. It's also no surprise that Gen Z over-indexed in customization here. Over half of all Gen Z meals are customized, and this is really becoming an expectation with top brands. Lastly, we can see that food packaging is something that helps fast casual restaurants really stand out. When you take a look at these brand differentiators, it's important to note that Gen Z is very connected when it comes to their dining experience. 45% of Gen Z looks at a mobile device while eating meals or snacks, and 72% of Gen Z shares pictures of their food with friends or family. The holistic dining experience that you provide is important, and you should expect that many elements of it, whether good or bad, will be shared and socialized by this generation online. All right, finally, let's look at the future-focused drivers. So as the current brand differentiators that we discussed become mainstream, these are the things that brands need to focus on to continue to be successful in the future. As you see on the top row, across all 3 subsegments, we see new technology emerging, like online, mobile, and kiosk ordering, entertainment at your tabletop, and great music to set the vibe of your establishment. Technology shows your consumers that you are future-focused. But remember that this cannot totally replace, especially in casual dine, the attentive and knowledgeable staff that we discussed in the previous slide. Each of these drivers build off one another. For QSRs in particular, a likable brand personality and being a kid-friendly establishment is very important. As we said before, Gen Z loves to connect to brands on a deeper level, and many of them are very closely connected to kids due to having younger siblings or are still kids themselves. So now that we have an understanding on these different expectations and visitation drivers for Generation Z, we're going to turn the conversation over to Tom Bates. So first of all, Tom, could you please explain how GP Pro approaches the innovation process?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. It clearly takes more of a market-back approach. And what we mean by market-back approach is when it comes to innovation, we don't want to be reactive to kind of external conditions and customers that are looking for new and innovative ideas. We want to be ahead of the curve. So we work very closely with market insights, strategy. Quite frankly, we're joined at the hip in regards to really collaborating very closely and ensuring that we are using kind of that market-back intelligence to really make the right informed decisions and what might be those future set solutions that are relevant to GP Pro, but more importantly, relevant to our customers, operators, as well as patrons. So things like, when you talk about sort of the dynamics that are going on right now with respect to, increasing labor rates, regulatory pressures, order accuracy, intense competition, impact of technology trends. Becca referred to, mobile ordering, technology. All of those are factors that really kind of impact and influence how we drive innovation at GP.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But knowing that there's so many different things to innovate around, how can GP decide where to focus their efforts?
Good question. What we try to do is, we want to act more as a solutions provider for our customers and not necessarily looking at reacting to what their needs and concerns. That's part of it. But again, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier in that we want to make sure that we are staying current, that we are being proactive, and what we're doing is we're bringing a different perspective, better understanding the customer. What type of customer are we looking at? Are we looking at sort of a QSR, LSR type of customer? Are we looking at somebody that is more full service, fast casual? All those are kind of characteristics that factor into how we want to approach and position innovation with those types of customers.
And how does that differ? There's obviously more disruptive, new-to-world innovation, and then there's more so things like line extensions. So how do those two things kind of differ when it comes to thinking about the food service industry?
So you're right. When it comes to innovation, we're all very familiar. My background in CPG, you do a lot of line extensions. Mm-hmm. They're important. They drive a lot of value for the organization. But you do need to understand sort of the dynamics between sort of those closer in, more adjacent type of innovation, and then longer term, more strategic innovation. Frankly, what I do at GP Pro is more in that longer term. We're looking at more fundamental innovation changes. And that right now is extremely exciting because of what's going on right now as it relates to technology, what's going on right now as it relates to demographics. Gen Zers, I mean, good grief, they have internalized so much technology. They have high expectations. So how do we respond to those types of needs? So for us, we're really focusing on kind of that more longer term innovation, things that will be more transformational for us and most importantly for our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So could you share an example of an innovation, a market-back innovation that was developed recently for the food service industry?
Yeah, I could sort of make reference to a couple of them. We just introduced what we call a Smartstock. It's Dixie Ultra Smartstock napkin, and it was we launched it in April of 2017, and it's kind of moving that typical napkin dispenser into something that has smart capability. It's electronic. And what it does is really addressing some of the needs that we've heard from customers, and again, through that market back intelligence around usage. So when it comes to napkins, I think we're all very familiar with the fact that sometimes you have a propensity to take a bunch of napkins and you take them back to your car, you take them back to your table. That is a significant amount of waste. It's also a significant amount of sustainability no-nos in regards to the wastefulness of the whole experience. So what we've done is we've been able to dose the amount of napkins, dispense the napkins based on needs. So we have both a back-of-house type of solution as well as a front-of-house. There's slightly different dynamics to it in terms of the flexibility and the intuitiveness to it. But importantly, what it does is actually counts the number of napkins being used. So depending on the menu offering, you may want to dose 3 napkins. If it's something like chicken wings or something that maybe is a little bit messier than other products, but we can adjust to that. Another example is something that we just recently introduced, and what we call it is a Smartstart Red Coloring. And it's wrapping the utensil, but what we refer to as the business end. Mm-hmm. So instead of enclosing fully the utensil, we're only wrapping the very top end of it. And that is, again, there's some smart economics around it in regards to sustainability, in regards to cost to the operators. But again, that was a need that we saw coming from LSRs around hygiene and around being smart with respect to the use of packaging and the use of coming up with the right type of solutions that are relevant to their operation environment and their customers.
Yeah, and I think that's great in terms of their staff too. Something that I hadn't touched on when I was kind of presenting out some of the things that Gen Z cares about is what Gen Z thinks about when they decide what restaurant to work in. So when they're working in even a fast food restaurant, they don't want it to be a very, just simplified process where they're just taking orders, taking money, giving out food. They want to interact with technology within their job as well. And they want to be learning new technologies in their position. So I think that's a great example of how it kind of integrates the sustainability that Gen Z cares about, but also the technology that they want to learn and want to use. And I guess that's a great segue into sustainability. So we know that Gen Z cares about sustainability. Frankly, the whole world cares about sustainability right now. It's definitely a hot topic in the news. But there's so many different ways that you can approach sustainability. So how would you recommend that any restaurant right now listening in could take sustainability and really innovate around that for the restaurant?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's a fundamental question that certainly a lot of operators are trying to understand. It's still valid around the 3 R's. Reduce, reuse, recycle. There's still kind of that foundation around sustainability. But what is emerging that is becoming more and more important is sort of that end of life solution for those disposable type products. And that, frankly, is where we're really putting a lot of focus against, is what are the right types of paths that we can take when it comes to consumables. And so things like, are the products recyclable? Are the products repulpable in that you can reconstitute and put it back into another type of end product? Is it compostable? Does it meet some of the requirements? I mean, the requirements right now in the U.S. is ASTM, BPI certifications. You have Cedar Grove certifications, but that seems to be where we want to put more focus. How can we increase the level at which our products can have an end of life kind of path that isn't just going to landfill. And there's right applications for the right types of solutions. Obviously, we're a very heavily fiber-based organization, so we look at things where we can recycle. Do we have a lot of our products that have recycled content? And we also, I alluded to, Smartstart cutlery. Obviously we use resin in that type of product. We're trying to understand how can we provide what those needs are from our customer. So that could be in the case of, again, resins. It could be a compostable type of solution, or it could be being able to move into the recycling stream with other like type resins.
And I think the great thing about moving toward more sustainable solutions is that, especially with Generation Z, there really is a return on your investment. So, of course, sometimes more sustainable solutions can be a bit more expensive in the beginning, but I think it really shows your customers that you care about the same things that they care about, and that you're also elevating those needs in your own establishment. So I had touched on the fact that over half of all Gen Z meals are customized, which is a pretty crazy statistic. So how do you think customization will continue to affect the food service industry? And is there a difference between personalization and customization?
Yeah, we're putting a lot of focus around this. You alluded to, in terms of the outset, talking about Gen Zers, talking about, kind of the individuality. They have high expectations around experience. They have high expectations that are not just like one of many. They want to be sort of viewed individually.
Unique, yeah.
So when you look at things like personalization, and we really sort of started to help kind of define what we mean by personalization and then what we mean by customization. In some respects, customization and customization we kind of define as, for instance, if you go into a sandwich shop and you want tomatoes, you want mayonnaise, you want honey mustard, etc. That's kind of customization for your personal consumption. When we talk about personalization, we're talking about the ability of putting, in the way of a coffee cup, there are certain brands that have significant badge value when it comes to a coffee cup. Imagine, for instance, if you could bring more of the patron's identity through packaging. So that's what we refer to as personalization. So, for instance, if you're college alumni, you could put your
logo,
logos, brand names, those types of things on the cup itself. So all of a sudden now somebody sees you and they're going, okay, so that, we'll use an example, Clemson. Mm-hmm. They know that, hey, your alumni is Clemson. All of a sudden now they're starting to know a little bit more about you. And so that's what we refer to as kind of personalization. The ability to bring more kind of an individual, quite frankly, bring more personalization to the experience in the case of what we're talking about today, Gen Zers.
Yeah, and that's really taking like the name on a coffee cup to the next level. I know I see so many Instagram posts of, someone's name on a coffee cup, but if you think, wow, that could actually be printed in cool colors and with my college alumni logo on it, I mean, that really takes it to a whole new level, and that's something that I could definitely foresee Generation Z and a lot of different generations sharing on their social media page. That becomes free advertising for a restaurant. I think that whole idea of packaging worth picturing or just having a truly Instagrammable meal, that's such a big deal right now. And knowing that restaurant experience can be shared so quickly, how should restaurants consider their brand identity? So, I mean, at the drop of a hat, that experience is now all over social media. So how can they kind of control that and just stay true to their brand and really try to capture their brand identity?
Yeah, no, I mean, and when you talk about, your marketing insights, I mean, that's what we're hearing. That's what we're hearing out there. And so how do you take those insights and then convert them into business opportunities? And when it comes to personalization, customization, that's a big area of opportunity that we think we can win. I mean, stepping back to some of the discussions that we had earlier, when it comes to GP, we do take kind of a very strategic approach to innovation. I mean, we really do ensure that we're taking, we have an approach where we want to make sure that we're working on strategic focus areas that we think we can win in. We refer to kind of domaining about, things like operational hygiene or operational efficiencies. And we focus in these guide rails to kind of help us identify what are those right opportunity areas and then translating that into specific opportunities. So we think that there is a real win, potentially midterm, longer term, around that personalization, customization, and how we can kind of translate that into benefits to our customers.
And I know another hot topic for everyone in the food service industry right now is delivery. So where do you kind of foresee the future of delivery, and just what are you kind of hearing from the market in regards to where there's success in that area?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
So I know like something that I've heard with delivery, there's obviously so many needs for the food to be the same experience that you're having when dining in. But I know there's been times for me where, the food gets to me 45 minutes later, and it doesn't really look anything like the experience I had in the restaurant. So knowing that, this food quality and this value, what am I getting for the dollar I'm spending is really important to Generation Z. So have you seen, certain successes with delivery, maybe of people kind of doing it right, or how would you suggest approaching the kind of beast that delivery is?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, we know that there is significant growth right now in that whole delivery space. Anything related to away from restaurant has become a really important focus. Restaurant operators are looking at their current footprint and how do you get extendability? How do you drive growth revenue through other ways without necessarily increasing the size of the restaurant. So delivery is important, but there is a balance between the benefits of new packaging and some of the costs. So obviously things around insulation are an important element of being able to deliver that experience from the time it leaves the restaurant to the time it goes to the patron. But we have to work out the right formulation. There are things that we can do. Thinking about secondary packaging. Maybe it's not necessarily the focus on the primary packaging, i.e. the carrier of the sandwich or for the French fries or whatever. It's more about some of that secondary packaging and how can you deliver something that has the right types of attributes that can extend that quality from the time it leaves the restaurant. So still working through it. This is not an area that is necessarily a slam dunk because you come up with something that necessarily solves everything. How do you maintain your French fries? How do you maintain the temperature? How do you maintain the crispiness? These are things that a lot of engineers are still working on. But again, it's that cost-benefit balance and coming up with the right type of solution. But trust me, there's a lot of good people trying to understand how we can deliver that. But there is a enabler around secondary and tertiary packaging that I think can help in that area.
So now I think we're going to turn it over to Stacy to ask some questions that have come in through the Q&A.
Fantastic. And so we do have a few questions to start. As a reminder, you can type in questions at any time through your On24 window, and we'll address as many as we can within the last 15 minutes. If we are finished with all of the questions before the time is up today, we'll just conclude early and give everyone a few minutes back in their day. But we do have a couple questions to start. The first question is, in future state, where do you think food service innovation is headed in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's my life right now in terms of better understanding that. I do believe that in our world at GP, it is around that technology enablers. and we are looking at systems. We refer to labor rates. You know, you have $15 labor rates, good grief. In some locations, it's even exceeded those types of rates. I mean, how can we deliver the products and services that we have, coupled with technology and systems that can impact on things like labor, how it can impact on quality, how can it impact on complexity of menu offerings. So for us, we're again continuing to make sure that we're joined at the hip with our marketing strategy brethren, and looking at more technology behind the counter type of solutions that can affect throughputs, efficiencies, quality of the product. Ensuring that we can come up with the right types of technology solutions that allow operators to use their crew more for direct customer facing, as opposed to necessarily doing some of the things that go on behind the counter that tend to be at times more tedious. So how do we kind of address some of that and be able to bring those crew members, those employees more connected to their customers, and have us do more of kind of that technology driving solutions. So that's where we're putting a lot of momentum over the next few years.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of that when it comes to technology to help with labor and back of house operations is really the marketing aspect of that from a restaurant's point of view. So as I talked about before, Generation Z really cares about other people and how things are affecting other people. So let's say that you end up being able to get a robot to do the fries for you in the back of house. I think that's a huge marketing story. It's not that that robot replaced someone on your team. It's not that you cut someone short from your restaurant and replace them with a robot. No, it's that now someone in your restaurant gets to have this really elevated position where they no longer are just doing the fries. They're really like managing this whole technology solution, and they're able to interact, like you said, better with guests. But really they're expanding their knowledge and their skills, and it's a better job for them as opposed to just being assigned to something that could be really tedious. So I think it's a really big marketing play just as much as it is technology as soon as you implement some of these new things.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Great. And along those lines, with all of this rapid innovation, how can a food service establishment make sure that they stay true to their brand and that they don't lose sight of their vision and their mission and vision?
Yeah, I mean, that's at core. I mean, what we've done at GP is before we started to embark on this more market back approach when it comes to innovation, you really do need to make sure that you've got the right vision, the right strategy on how you can win. And I think that also is applicable to QSRs, to limited serve restaurants, to fast casual. I think major chains need to make sure that they have a vision and a strategy that is true to what they want to be to their customers. And so I think that is that's a fundamental importance, and that I think sets the stage for winning. And that's where we love to be kind of engaged. We refer to sometimes what we call immersions with chains that have a good sense of their identity, and then being able to go into their facilities and really doing an assessment and an audit on where we can come up with the right types of solutions that are relevant to their visions, to their identity around their brands, and really come up with something that really is very, very collaborative.
Thank you for that insight. A few more questions that we do have coming in. One is regarding online reviews. So when it comes to snarky or bad comments or those ill reviews online, how do you feel about deleting or hiding the comments versus directly addressing it?
Well, I would go back to what I kind of talked about how Gen Z is really known for their authenticity, and they really value that authenticity in restaurants as well. And so I think that what I would probably suggest is that it's always important to answer it, first of all. It's important for them to know that there is someone on the other side of the screen, that when they say something, it's actually going to a recipient, and that recipient is your restaurant. So I think it's important to answer with integrity and authenticity. So of course you probably will understand the situation and what actually happened. So if there's ways to kind of explain what happened, explain your restaurant, that's great. If you have to just apologize, that's also great. Because I think that a big part of this is just having that authenticity and integrity to kind of own up to where maybe things messed up, but also to celebrate the successes too. And then I think once you've actually commented back and had that discussion, it's okay at that point if you feel the need to hide something that maybe misrepresented your brand. But I also think that it shows authenticity for there to be some bad reviews and some bad comments, because it shows that your restaurant, like any other restaurant, isn't perfect. And so I know that when searching through, a review platform and you only see great reviews, I think there is some skepticism in that as well.
Thank you. We have another question regarding Instagram marketing. Do you have any best practices that you can share or shed some light on when it comes to marketing via Instagram?
I wouldn't say that we have a ton of background in marketing via Instagram. The only thing I would say there is just kind of to touch on what I just said, just to make sure you're really being authentic. So if your burrito doesn't look when you're in the store like how it looks on Instagram, I mean, that's not really helping you from a marketing perspective. I think it's just important to really be true to your brand. And so whatever you're posting of your food, of your establishment, just make sure that it's a good representation of what your customer will actually see when they enter into your establishment. I know that recently I was ordering catering for a meeting, and a sandwich brand had put underneath their sandwiches, let's be honest, these sandwiches probably won't look like this when they get to you, but they will be tasty. And, that really appealed to me, and I think that's something that would really appeal to Gen Z, because it's kind of that honesty and that authenticity once again. It's saying that, these pictures look great and your sandwich is going to be great, but maybe it won't look exactly like how this looks because we did have, our food artist involved or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Shifting gears just a little bit, one question we have is, this person wrote, my restaurant tries to be more eco-friendly, but the more we do, the more it seems to cost. What advice would you give to help us prioritize what we do to be more green? And what is it that our customers, Gen Z and others, expect from their favorite restaurants in terms of being more sustainable?
Yeah, great question, and a challenge, because they're right. Eco-friendly, more sustainable type of packaging can be more expensive, and I think that's where you really do need to engage the supplier that you're working with that is selling those types of eco-friendly type of products. Make sure that they understand what the benefits of these products are and whether they are the right fit for that restaurant. I mean, I think you need to be smart. I mean, when it comes to sustainability, an integral part of sustainability is the cost component. So you're trying to find something that manages the cost and then manages the environment. And I think you just need to make sure that you're applying the right common sense to those types of initiatives. I mean, if somebody's selling you something that is claimed to be compostable, and yet you have no infrastructure in your town or city for compostability, probably, and you're probably paying a significant premium for that, the value really is not there. And eventually, your patrons will also understand that while your intentions are good, your execution is not there. So be smart. Think about what your waste is that is going out of that restaurant. Think about, do you have the right types of sortation? Do you have the right types of infrastructure in your respective community that can be smart in terms of packaging? But be smart, again, it's around reduction, it's around reusability, it's around recyclability. Think about those foundational basics, and then think about what the costs are, and also in terms of perception. Things that, and I may have a little bit of a bias because we're Georgia Pacific, but fiber-based materials, they are renewable, they are made of renewable products. Those types of things, I think do resonate with, with Gen Zers or with anybody that is, very conscious about sustainability and what is being projected from that perspective restaurant.
And I would add to that there's also a lot of statistics that show that consumers of all different ages want to know what your restaurant is doing in regards to sustainability. So even if you feel like everything that you're offering isn't quite as sustainable as it could be, I'm sure there's areas in which your restaurant is really succeeding and really meeting the mark. And make sure that your customers know about those. So if you have a great initiative going on right now with food waste, find a way to advertise that in your establishment. Or if you just switched from foam to paper, or if you just made some sort of big move in regards to sustainability, make sure your customers know the areas that you're focusing on and the areas where you're succeeding.
Great. Thank you. We do have time for just a couple more questions, so if anyone does have a question, please don't hesitate to type those in now. We do have one other question in the queue currently, and that is, for those restaurants, food service operations, growing lettuce, such as romaine or others, indoors, are you seeing a growing demand or a need for understanding for that within food service or among consumers?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, not per se. There's no question that, that whole farm to table is an important element, I think, of menu offerings in that area. But again, I'm not sure if I could really adequately comment on the specifics regarding that question.
Okay. Well, thank you. We do not have any other questions at the moment, but I do want to take a minute to once again thank both Rebecca and Tom for your time presenting this insightful information. I think everyone's gotten a lot out of it, and if folks do have questions after the webinar, please do not hesitate to email those questions to programming@restaurant.org, and we'll be happy to follow up with Tom and Rebecca to provide any answers that we can. We also want to thank again our sponsor, GP Pro, for your support. And we will, again, upon conclusion, send an email out to everyone to complete the webinar evaluation. Again, your feedback is very important in providing insight and suggestions on future topics that we'll be covering. So with that, we do not have any more questions. So thank you again, Rebecca and Tom. We really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.